If you are overwhelmed in your interior design business and your first thought is, gosh, I need to hire somebody, I want you to be careful because hiring someone into chaos does not actually remove that chaos. In fact, it just gives the chaos to another person and now they have the privilege of managing that. Yeah, and sometimes a person actually can even create more chaos, more work for you because now on top of all the clients and the projects and the vendors and the invoices and those design decisions, you're also managing someone who has no idea how the business inside your head is supposed to work. And on today's show, we are talking about why interior designers keep hiring before they are ready and what actually needs to be fixed and how to know whether you can financially afford the hire and whether you even need a full-time employee in the first place, because hiring should never be a meltdown decision. It should be a business decision. Here is how this usually happens. This is what I see in my coaching clients. You are doing everything, the design, the client communication, procurement, scheduling, bookkeeping, vendor follow-up. I mean, the list goes on. And then one day, everything all of a sudden hits at once, just like literally a perfect storm. The client wants revisions. The vendor needs an answer. A sofa is delayed. QuickBooks, for whatever reason, is not working and you can't figure it out. Your inbox is out of control and you forgot to follow up with that lead that came in late last night. And you think, gosh, I cannot keep doing this. I need some help. And don't get me wrong, you probably do need help, but that does not automatically mean that you need an employee. And it definitely does not automatically mean you need another designer or an assistant designer. And this is where I see people go straight to, oh, I need a junior designer, or oh, I need an assistant designer, or oh, I just need help, and they'll take anything that breathes. My question is always why? Time out. Just call the time out. Why? What is it exactly that we're trying to solve here? Because I am overwhelmed is not a job description. Maybe you're overwhelmed because you're spending 5 hours a month doing bookkeeping, or maybe you are buried in scheduling, and maybe procurement is eating your week alive. And maybe your processes are so inconsistent that every project requires you to reinvent your wheel. And those are completely different problems. And each one is going to require a different solution beyond you have a heartbeat. I want to hire you because I'm overwhelmed. See, that's the misdiagnosis. It's the I have too much work, so I need more people misdiagnosis. And that just isn't always right. And you may have too much of the wrong work sitting on your plate. Because if you are spending owner level time reconciling expenses, you do not need another designer. You need a bookkeeper. And if you are losing hours every week scheduling meetings, organizing files, and answering all those questions over and over again, you may need admin help. And if everybody asks you where things live and what happens next or how you normally handle something, you may not have a staffing problem at all. Instead, you probably have a process problem. And this is where I see the clients who come to me get into real trouble. They use hiring to solve something that should have been solved through good systems. Then they bring somebody into the business and 6 months later say, oh, they just can't do anything without me. But with all due respect, why would they be able to? Nothing was documented. Nothing was standardized. The role was vague. The expectations were vague. The processes are all hanging out in your head. And you did not hire a person into a company. You just hired them into your brain. And now both of you are ready to rip your hair out. So let's talk about what actually needs to happen before you make that first meaningful, intentional, thought-based hire, not the meltdown hire. This is about tracking your time for 2 weeks and actually tracking it. The design, the sales, the client communication, bookkeeping, procurement, and sitting with yourself and saying, which ones of these actually really need me? If you are the principal designer, your highest value work, I would venture to guess, is going to be those creative direction decisions, client relationships, sales, business development, final design decisions, and strategic growth. See, your highest value activity is probably not reconciling your credit card statement. In fact, when I say that out loud, you may find yourself chuckling in the car while you're driving down the road. Yeah, that's because you know it's true. You're just not sure how to effectuate it. So we have to start there. Remove the work that does not require your unique expertise. And that may immediately tell you what kind of support you actually need in your business. All right, second of all, I want you to know your financials. Before you hire anyone, you need to know, can your business actually afford them? I can't tell you how many designers come to me and they're like, I was overwhelmed. Great news. Since I last saw you, I brought on a new person. And I just wanted to say, hold the phone, because oh my gosh, did we evaluate the fiscal impact? How many hours a week? Are they a contractor? Are they an employee? What are you actually hiring for? Do you know the job description you want to put them in? See, it's not whether you have a busy month. It's not whether 3 proposals are out, and not whether a huge project might sign. You have to ask, if nothing changed from today forward, can your current business support the cost? You have to know your average monthly revenue. And folks, you'll hear me say it over and over again. You've got to know your numbers. You have got to know your numbers. And I repeat again, you've got to know your numbers. Can you identify your average monthly expenses, your gross profit, your net profit, your cash position, your accounts receivable, and more importantly, your accounts payable, because that's money going out, and your pipeline that's going to fund all of this as you grow and continue down the journey of being a CEO? See, revenue does not tell you whether you can afford payroll. You can have a multi-million-dollar or million-dollar business that is still financially unhealthy. Those are the clients I love to work with, because we get to start separating revenue from true profit. You can sign the biggest project of your career and still not have predictable enough revenue to responsibly add a full-time employee. And this is another reason your bookkeeper may need to come before your assistant designer in the hiring process. Because if your books are months behind, how are you going to make a thoughtful hiring decision? You're not. You're just guessing. And I'm going to be really honest with you. Payroll is too serious to guess about, because it's linked directly to someone else's life and their ability to care for the people that they love. So do not just look at the salary or hourly rate. Third of all, you have to understand the true cost of bringing someone aboard. What does the person actually cost the company? And you're like, well, Katie, I pay them X number of dollars hourly. Okay, let's take a beat here. Let's talk about payroll taxes and benefits and insurance and software and equipment and paid time off and training and management. And one of the biggest costs that people forget, your time, the most valuable asset that you have. See, a new employee may require more from you before they require less, and you need to plan for that. Then you got to stress test those numbers. What happens if revenue drops 20% for a few months? What happens if a major client pauses? What happens if that project gets delayed, like we're seeing so much of in the current economic situation we're in? Can you still comfortably carry that person on your payroll? Because once you hire somebody, especially if they're an employee, and even more so if they are full-time, you're taking on a whole different level of responsibility and ethics that pertain not only directly to them, but also to the IRS. All right, fourth, you're going to decide what you are actually hiring. And you do not automatically need a full-time employee, folks. Maybe you need a part-time employee. Maybe you need a contractor. Maybe you need a bookkeeper for 5 hours a month and a virtual assistant for 10 hours a week, or a procurement specialist for 15 hours a week, maybe a project coordinator 20 hours a week. See, fractional support can be a much smarter first step than immediately committing to, gosh, a full-time payroll. That's a lot to bite off. It's like eating the elephant in one bite. The goal is not to build the biggest team. I always think it's interesting when designers are like, oh, well, I have 15, 20 people on my team. I'm like, okay, should you? What do they all do? Maybe, maybe not. See, the goal is to build the right infrastructure. And this matters because designers often think, gosh, growth means I need more employees. No, growth means that you need the correct amount of capacity. Sometimes that capacity is going to be 5 hours a week. Sometimes it's 20, may even hit 40. And your job as the CEO in the active role is figuring that out before you decide what title goes on that job posting. You got to make sure you're classifying contractors and employees correctly with your accountant, your payroll professional, or your attorney. There can be very serious IRS implications if, for instance, you have contractors coming in to a designated place of business where they have a desk and you're providing the equipment and they have set hours. That is going to get you in hot water. Make sure you're reaching out to someone who is educated, experienced, and licensed to handle this and guide you forward. Do not use contractor as a cheaper word for an employee, because let me tell you, if the IRS does a clawback, it can be brutal. All right, fifth, build the system before you add the person. This is exactly what we were talking about. You do not want to hand chaos off to people coming into your organization. Worse yet, you hand them chaos, odds are they're going to take that chaos and amplify it into even more chaos in your organization. If somebody started Monday, I want you to think, could they understand how a project moves from contract to installation? Where do the files live? How are drawings named? How do you onboard a client? How do we handle revisions? And what happens when something is damaged? What happens after installation? Where do your templates live? If your answer to all those questions is, I just know how we do it, then the business, I'm going to be brutally honest with you, is not ready to delegate that work yet. You got to get it out of your head. Liquidate your head should be the subtitle of this episode. Write it down. Create the process, because you do not hire people to compensate for broken systems. You got to build the system first, then you hire someone who can actually run it. Okay. 6, I want you to define success, and we're going to do it differently. Do not hire a vague design assistant. What are they actually going to own? Is it going to be vendor quotes or maybe furniture schedules, your sample library, procurement tracking, presentation prep? This is where we drill down to the nitty gritty. I want you to be specific. They need to know in their head, this is what I own. This is what Katie owns. This is where I can make a decision. This is where I need Katie's approval. This is what good performance looks like. See, clarity creates independence, and vagueness is going to create constant questions for your entire team. In fact, this is why we do not take interns at our firm. It is not because I do not believe in internships. I do. It is because an intern deserves to be taught. They need mentoring and feedback and exposure and context, and they need somebody willing to invest in their development. And that takes time, real time, if it's going to be done right. If we cannot give an intern the level of nurturing and teaching they deserve, bringing them in simply because we're on the overwhelm doesn't serve them, and it does not serve us. I want you to hear me loud and clear. Interns are not cheap labor. A junior employee is not automatically immediate capacity either. And neither is that fresh out of school grad who is finding their way in the work world for the first time. Early career people often require more from you before they require less. In fact, I literally said to our labor contractor probably about last year, I said, I do not want anyone new out of school. I need someone who's comfortably settled into middle-aged, who can handle direct, honest, open conversation, who wants to have clear and direct, respectful and kind communication where we can drill down and get to issues. See, before you hire someone at the early level, ask yourself whether you actually have the capacity to develop them. Because I don't know about you, but I'd rather pay $10 more an hour and know somebody is going to handle what I've been giving them because they have good processes, good systems, and the experience to be able to step into the space. In fact, this is why often an assistant designer is the wrong hire. And I see so many designers do this. They jump right into hiring another designer, and it's way too soon, especially when they are still building their brand and what their firm is known for and their signature look. Because now you are asking somebody else to replicate your creative view, and you may not have even fully articulated it yet. And you give them a room, and then they bring it back, and it doesn't feel like you, and you revise it, and they revise it, and eventually think, oh my gosh, I could have just done it faster myself. And maybe you really could have. But here's the deal. The creative process was not ready to be transferred. Because if your design philosophy is still, I just know it when I see it, yeah, you cannot expect somebody else to recreate that independently. So what I really encourage designers to do when you are ready to scale and you are ready to grow, don't go to an immediate other designer. I want you to look at what you can remove that does not require your creative brain. Bookkeeping, admin, scheduling, procurement, tracking. Let the principal designer stay focused on the work only the principal designer should be doing. And then as your brand and your systems start to mature, you can start transferring more creative responsibility. In fact, if you're sitting here today and you're like, Katie, my firm's at the point where I am ready to transfer creative responsibility, great. How do I do that? I will tell you, in our organization, I try to create all the mood boards. Then we turn the main designer, the principal designer loose to go forth and do. Then the plan comes back to me to be validated. There's usually 2 to 3 items that have to be swapped out, but I can tell you the lion's heart of the work is in alignment with what was created on that mood board, so they know the vibe I'm going for. They're not left searching in the dark. The mindset shift I need you to make is this: stop asking who can help me and start asking, what does my business actually need? See, and those are 2 very different questions, because who can help me comes from a state of complete exhaustion. And don't get me wrong, that is very real. But what does the business need? That comes from true leadership, because sometimes the business needs a person. Sometimes it needs better software or bookkeeping, a better process, maybe better pricing, maybe fewer clients or clearer rules. See, a person is one kind of infrastructure. They are not a substitute for infrastructure. And this is why hiring cannot be a meltdown decision in the middle of the night with a tissue. If you have one terrible Tuesday and you were on Indeed that night writing a job posting, I need you to stop. I need you to stop and think, what actually broke today besides you, right? Capacity, process, communication, skills, leadership, who knows? Or maybe truly it was just a terrible week. Do not build permanent overhead into your business that is going to drain the financial lifeblood out of it because of a temporary crisis that only sets you up for defeat. So think about it this way, interior designers. You are brilliant in designing spaces, and as companies grow, we also have to learn how to design organizations. And that is what hiring really is. We're talking about organization design. Who owns what? How does information move? How are decisions made? What work is required of you? See, the goal is not more employees. The goal is actually more capacity. And those are not the same thing. We tend to mix them up, but that is a mistake, because you've got to have the process before you have the people, and financial visibility before payroll. And you got to have clarity before you go out and do recruitment, and strategy before you dive into that well of emotion. That is how you build a team instead of simply adding more people who need you. And this is the exact work I love doing with my coaching clients in Success by Design. When someone comes to me and says, Katie, I need to hire, my first question is not who, it is why. What are we actually solving? Sometimes the answer is absolutely, it is time to hire. We need to go there. Sometimes the answer is not quite yet. Let's dig a little deeper. First, we need to fix your financial visibility, your systems, your profitability, your process, and your organizational structure. Then we hire the person who actually moves the business forward. And that is the difference between adding payroll and building capacity. See, you cannot scale chaos by adding people to it. In fact, it's just an expediter of more chaos, because the more confused they are, the more they feel, and usually out of feelings comes more chaos. You have to design the company first, then build the team that actually can support it. So before you say, I need to hire, I'm going to give you 3 questions today I want you to answer. What exactly are you trying to remove from your plate? Does that require a person? Or does that require a process, or even a better process? And then, can the business actually afford the solution? Then I'm going to give you a bonus question. Does this need to be a full-time employee at all? And those questions right there can save you from a very expensive mistake. This is why I want to have a conversation with you. Head over to fixmydesignbiz.com. Let's avoid the mistake. Let's figure out what's really going on in your business. Let's still drill down when it comes to being a CEO and the 5 pillars I teach that really get us where we need to be. So we're not just business owners. We're CEOs making smart decisions, especially in our HR department, and what it really looks like to run a great business. Because your business should be working for you, not you working for it. Until next time. Take care.